well. But you want to see basically whatever you do here, you should see in the mouth. If you don't, then either the vertical was off or something was not right. So I'm just gonna do it that one time, and then I don't typically do anything else here, so I'll move next and move into the sculpting the base step. This step, depending on how well it generates, is where you're going to take some time. The aesthetics, if you don't like the way they look, you're going to fix some things here. So I'll go through and I'll kind of smooth some things up, reshape some of my gingiva areas. If I use like the more intense gingival aesthetics, I'll go through and use my smoothing tool, kind of like a flamer, and just kind of flame over the wax to smooth it out a little bit and get rid of the sharp edges and things. So it just depends on what you're looking for. You also have to keep in mind that what you see here on the screen is going to look way more intense than what it's actually going to look like in the once it's produced. So you don't want to overdo and smooth out too much because you'll lose pretty much all of your gingiva. So the main things that I typically look for here are the gingival heights. So I want to make sure that both sides match. And that my papillas are not too overdone. So those are usually two of the main things that I'll see when I'm going through these. Is that all of my gingiva looks a little puffy in the papilla areas, and that maybe it's a little too intense. In any areas where I pull this back, so I can see here that I've got a connector showing, and the gingiva is further away, you have to keep in mind that you're going to fill the pocket with a bonding agent and top those teeth in. That bonding agent is going to push up out. So it's going to fill a lot of this in for you when you bond it in. So you don't want to overdo your gingiva because what's going to happen if you overdo it is that bonding agent is going to push out onto the top of the teeth, which you don't want. So you want to make sure that these gingiva levels are not too high on the papilla areas. The other thing too is you don't want to bring the gingiva up over the top of the connectors. If you do that, you're going to get all kinds of errors when we go into the coupling mechanism step because it doesn't know how to cut a hole across the top of the connector. It only knows how to cut the hole down, straight down. So if you have it up over the top, it's going to error out. So I always check that as well to make sure that I don't have anything like that going on. I also like to look at the lingual and make sure that I don't have any hard to polish areas. So like, for example, this area right here, this is going to be a little difficult for me to get in here and polish. So I may add some gingiva in here to get rid of that indentation behind the tooth. And make this a little easier to polish. You typically have it right here in between the canine and the first bicuspid. So I'll spend a little bit of time kind of bulking those areas up and making it raised instead of indented so that you don't have a difficult time getting the pumice wheel in there. And I'll just look around it one more time before I move forward. I don't typically overanalyze it if it's a immediate denture. I more look at it if it's a final denture, just because your aesthetics are going to be compromised here due to the fact that you don't have enough space for anything. So everything's going to be a little bit puffier looking, a little bit more overdone. And then some other things you can do. This is a trick that I like to show. So if I
Can we go back again? It was redness, so that means it's thin.
that's your minimum thickness.
Minimum thickness.
Yeah. there is no way to auto correct the minimum thickness, so you have to manually add. So one of the things I like to show here is sometimes patients want their rugae in their dentures, and there's no real good way to do it. You can see here from the auto generation that it didn't do a good job transferring that into the palate of the denture. So the easiest way to add that, if it's something you want to add, is I fade my denture base so I can see through it. Now I can see all these nice rugae here that the patient has. And then I just grab my add tool, and I'm just going to come through here and I'm going to start adding material. I'm just tracing those out.
Should you fix the minimum thickness first before doing that?
Honestly, unless it's extremely underdone, then I actually don't fix the minimum thickness at all.
Well, I think mine's extremely.
Did so as long as you typically fill in the value there in the base thickness as to whatever the minimum is, you can leave it. But if you leave it at like 1.5 and it's supposed to be 3, then yeah, you'd want to go and add or go back and change it to whatever your minimum thickness is supposed to be.
How far would you go back?
It's in that step where we generated the gingiva, so it's just a step or two back.
You're talking about the tabs at the top?
So it'd be the previous tab at the top, so the one that looks like a denture, and then it's the whatever gingiva base you were working on, whether it be the upper or the lower. And then you'll see in that box, you'll see a base thickness set there.
It's like the further we get into it, the longer it takes.
So the problem that you're having is with
I had a problem. This teeth moved, so it was so red, more thickness. I'm trying to slide it in,
but this is
but
the
it's,
only way
I want to see.
Why are these so
towards the end of the course they start
close to the model?
I had a problem with the lower when I was cutting, so
Oh, you didn't trim enough?
I didn't trim enough, so I tried to lift the lower up.
Then you can't do that. Then it won't have enough base thickness. It was gonna give you an error.
And then I take my smoothing tool, like a wax plane, and I just kind of smooth it out.
Yeah, still loading. Yeah, I didn't cut it flat before, so it gave me an error of the teeth touching the base.
Yeah, that's
So when I came to try to move the teeth up,
yes. Well, you couldn't just simply follow the instruction on the big screen.
So now I have it really pretty intensely carved in there. I'm just going to switch over to
I don't know if I
my
could even
smoothing
fix
tool.
this.
You wanna come
And I
here?
like to blend
This
the
one-
edges out here a little bit more than the
It
rest.
should be
So then it
okay.
kind of fades into the
Here, you
area
should
where
have
the teeth are.
cut to move that.
yeah, either
So you'll see
remove
I've
this
blended
or
these
made
spots.
these small. So I don't know if this is the cause of an issue.
A little bit more,
go
and then I'll
back.
just kind of run through the rest of it and blend it just a little bit.
When you start in order to just like test this. Yes, let me show you. Because the only option I have.
So then you end up with a little texture in there. Some other things that you can do in this sculpting step are the stippling. So we just added this in this version of the software. So you can add stippled wax patterns to the outer surface of the denture now. Before I show you this, it will look really, really bad on the design, but it looks really good on the printed product. So don't so much pay attention to the way it's going to look here, because it will look really extreme. So I'm just going to go around just the necks of these teeth. It also does take a little bit of time to generate, so I'm not going to do the whole denture or a large area. I'm just going to do these areas here. And then you can choose the pattern type. So there's a fine pattern and a regular pattern. I also like to increase the depth of it. So it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna look really intense right here, but when you print it out, you're barely gonna be able to see. So So then when I apply it, it's only going to apply to the areas that you highlight red. And that's what it kind of looks like. Now, again, it does look terrible. It really does. I saw this and I'm like, nobody's going to use this. But then I saw it on an actual printed denture and it looks really good. It does. So I would recommend not on a live case. When you get back, you know, if you're going to try and test
There's a
print
problem,
anything,
it
go ahead
doesn't
and
load,
test it
so
out
the
on
guy
something.
goes faster than the computer.
Also, not a good idea to do this if you're going to add composite characterization because it just wastes time when you do this because there's no point.
Yeah, but
You're going to layer over it anyway.
select everything.
Um,
Now. Let me
And then
see.
you also
Okay.
have your ID tag. So
So
this is
now
also new
you
to
can-
this version of the software. One of the things that I prefer to do is I don't like it on the outer surface of the denture. So I'll flip it over and I'll check this allow sculpting on inner surface. And then it'll allow me to add it on the inside of the denture so that it's not visible while the patient's on. So I'll hit the add symbol. It'll attach to my mouse. And then I can drop it and then rotate. And then when I hit the double apply here, it'll
So
engrave
it's
it.
in the right
Now, you also want to be careful
Yeah.
not to, you know, mess too much with
Very
the
thin.
thicknesses. So I always put it in a non-load bearing area.
Let's see how thin
Usually
they
way
are.
back in the roof of the pallet, because that's typically a non-load bearing area. But you don't want to get too close to the edge because that can affect your suction. So kind of close back there, but not all the way to the back.
It's not too bad.
I think
Where it is
minimum
there.
is like
And then sometimes what I'll
1.5.
do is I'll take the
Should be
denture
okay.
to the resin
Yeah.
and I'll fill it in.
Check
So there's
this.
a contrast between the colors so you can see it a little clearer. But from this side, you shouldn't be able to see it unless you make it too deep.
Here, so you gotta fix some of these areas.
Yeah,
We should be okay.
thank you.
Now, this is where it's all based on the outline. So you would want to first add to the model and the sculpt step in the prepare area, and then you could extend the border back onto that added area. But again, this is an immediate, it's going to be relined, so they could probably fix that area in the reline. Then from here, I'll go forward. So this coupling mechanism step, you can see here I've got a couple areas where the teeth are coming through. So because I'm designing my own teeth, I can edit the bottoms of the necks of the teeth, the basal surfaces, automatically. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that my path of insertion is good. So that's what this control point is for. And you'll notice as I move it, the purple area is tilt and tip on the necks of those teeth. So that's setting that path of insertion. So I need to make sure that I don't have any of that purple sticking out the outside of the denture base. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off here and I'm going to look from this view and hit the preview button so you can see what it does. You'll notice that the basal surfaces of these teeth are kind of lumpy and rough. This will smooth everything out and make the walls under the gingival margins a little bit more passive so that it slips right into the pockets and there's no resistance. Because if it pushes up at all, then it's not going to bond into the pocket properly. So you can see here that they're all very smooth. And then when I look here, you can see that it tapered this wall inward as it goes down so that it fits nice and passive down in those pockets. It also set all of the teeth on the same path of insertion, so there's no variance in the bridge from one unit to the other. So it's all going to just drop right into those pockets. A few settings that you want to watch for here. So when I turn my gingiva back on, I can still see this tooth here. So I can do a couple things to make sure that that doesn't pop through. The first thing is this coupling depth. What that is it's the amount of tooth that's below
that's what
the
his
gingiva
selected
mark
is.
that's left on the
Let's
tooth.
see how these are.
So I can
That's
lower
a-
this value all the way down to 1 millimeter.
That one.
So
Yeah, that's the
most of
one
the
that is
time I'm
selected right
adjusting
now.
this on my immediates because I'm limited on space. So if I go ahead and preview it again, I'm going to zoom in on that spot. You'll see that it either eliminates that tooth popping through or there's just a little bit of that tooth popping.
About to shut down, is that what you were gonna do before I moved over here? No. You already did that. Yeah, but I can do it again.
So it eliminated the whole tooth popping through there.
It's when your administration is.
And then you can see what it looks like now on the
Yeah,
other
about-
sides.
Where's that little
Now
map?
when I go to the next step, this is where I would normally generate pockets. Now, because this is a monoblock, I don't have pockets. It's going to be a one-piece try-in with no tooth separation from the base. So I would just go next. It's not going to make me do anything like
But
that.
it just says dentsply. It
Now,
doesn't-
if we were using, we do have a try-in workflow that's built into the software. If I were to use that workflow, it would allow me to go through this, change the copied order that it creates to my final, however I'm going to produce that. So in this case, it would be based with design teeth. Then the whole design is saved. I don't have to do anything else. It'll let me pull in a new scan. That particular workflow does not work real well at the moment. We're in the process of transitioning from it to a new workflow that'll be much easier. So usually what I recommend is do your monoblock, have the doctor take his wash impressions inside of that denture, and then scan that denture back in and do a new case. You can still see the tooth molds that you use, so you can repeat and use those again. It will, when he scans the denture in, you'll have the tooth positions already, so you can move the teeth back into position. And then you'll have the proper vertical and the proper fit, so you'll have more space. You'll be able to slim down the gingiva a little bit. I'm just going to go through the lower here real quick because I'm not going to change anything.
Brandon, what about T-bars?
That's right. Thank you, I forgot. So I'll show you all on the lower. You do want to do this on the upper. Does everybody know what the T-bars are? So these are basically, if I understand this correctly, these are to keep the denture base from warping, right? Yep. So you have to add these T-bars. So I'm going to show you here on the lower. There are, do you have a lower with them?
We can pass it around, Brandon, if you want.
So let's pass this one around, and then I'll show on the lower what it's supposed to look like. So that's how the upper should look. So the lower is a little bit different because obviously there's no palate here. So when I do the lower, I'm going to add the T-bar. So the middle icon there, that's an attachments button. You're going to go into the group attachments, and then you're going to open this up, and there's going to be a T-bar attachment. So the default orientation doesn't matter because they're all typically set the same way. So all I need to do is click and set it, and then I can left click and grab it and drag it around. I can use the control points to rotate it. And then I can position it. So typically, when you position the front one, you want it in between the bicuspids, like that. Since I only have the first bicuspid and the molar, I'm going to put it in between those two. I want to make sure that it's down low enough. So you want it about 2 to 3 millimeters below the gingiva margins. And you want to make sure that it doesn't pop out or go through the denture. So I can see on here that I've got these wings out here. So I can use the green control points to bring those in. And now I've got my front T-bar. Then to apply it, I just hit the green apply button there. Yep. For the lower, the upper you'll have two.
Oh.
Yep. And did you see the denture that we're passing around? So the upper will have two. One will be positioned more back here, in between the molars, and then another one in between the bicuspids. Same kind of position. Do you do a straight bar across the back of the lowers?
Actually do two.
You do two?
Yeah, on top of each other.
Oh, so you just add a second T-bar and connect it to the first one, or?
No, just two straight bars between the molars and the back.
Oh, okay.
One 3 millimeters below and one 6 millimeters below.
Okay. So then you'll grab the bar here, add it. So this one, I like to do view direction. So it's going to be straight on from my view. So I'll come over here to the side, and I'll place one here. And now that I've placed it, I can use the blue to move it, the green to resize it. I'll lift this one up a little bit.
That one's lower than the part that one. The most posterior one is lower, the plates at different heights or the same height?
So there's actually two that I'll be placing back here. So one will be up here. And then I'll add another one. And there'll be more down here. Again, you want to make sure that it doesn't go through. So I'm going to shorten it. So then I'll apply both of those. So you should have one at about 3 millimeters below and one at about 6 millimeters below. So is that right, Debbie?
Yeah, the lowering can go as far as 10 millimeters away from the tube. Just these two back there. And
Okay.
the heels of the lower.
So that's what your lower should look like. The upper should look like the one that's passing around right now. And then I'll go next from here. And same steps here with the teeth. Try to next do this without changing anything. I'll go next. And now we'll get an upper and lower monoblock denture for our tray.
Any reason you have to make groove inside the teeth? Can you make a groove?
There's,
For retention for the bottom.
I mean, you could put retention in there, it wouldn't hurt anything. You could just take like a burr and rough it up a little bit. You really don't need it though. If you think about it, it's all one bridge. So the fact that it's all connected together when you put it in, it's going to hold itself in. If it were individual teeth, that would be a different story, but as one full bridge, you shouldn't have to.
Individual to just for example, zirconia to denture. You only have to put a couple of teeth on the added.
I wouldn't do zirconia teeth dentures. I mean, if you think back to porcelain teeth and why they don't work very well, the denture has to have something that gives, and typically it's the teeth. Well, when you make a material that hard and put it in a denture, nothing gives, so it's just a break. Yeah.
Just one quick question. Adding attachments to this denture, it only goes through the base and not to the teeth. Is it because it's proprietary teeth?
Well, it's because you're doing it on the sculpt base step. If you were doing it on the sculpt teeth step, then yeah, you would put it on the teeth instead of the
So if I were to put a hole through it, it'll go through the teeth and the base both at the same time?
only if you set it up as a monoblock.
Okay.
If you set it up as base with design teeth and it's two separate STLs, it'll only go through one or the other.
Okay.
So now that I've got my green check marks here, I can close this. So down here at the bottom, you can see the tooth mold that I chose. So I don't have to go back into the case to find what mold I was using. I can get it right here. So when the case comes back in from trying and I go to start the final design, I just go here, find the old mold, and then I use that one when I go into the new case and design the final. As long as everything was fine and they liked the way that the mold looked.
Is there a way just to import in a new base and on the same design?
So, kind of. Like I said, the current try-in workflow is not working properly at the moment. We're coming out with a new one in the 2022 software that's supposed to release in September.
So that will allow a new impression to be imported into this design?
Yeah. So what we're opening up is, what we found is that a lot of clinicians are not sending the patient's dentures back with the wash impressions in them. They're wanting to scan them on their scanners. So that's what we're opening up. They'll be able to scan it, send you a new case with that wash impression in that try-in denture. You'll be able to take that case, right-click on it, reuse CAD design. You'll get a whole list of every order that you've got that's a denture. You'll find the original. It'll import that original design in. It'll align it with the new scans, and then it'll reuse that design with the new fit vertical position.
So keep the same teeth setup
Yeah.
and just change the basically the impression.
Yeah. Yeah, the impression and the vertical relationship change.
Nice.
So to find my output files, so this is how you're going to print these. You're going to right click on your case after you've closed out and saved, go down to advanced and generate the CAM output here. So this creates those STL files that you're going to use for printing. And then if I right click on the case again, go to advanced and explore CAM, these are your STLs. So there's one for the upper and one for the lower. And if I double click on them, there they are. Now you'll notice that they're not in vertical relationship here. They're in printer bed relationship, which means they've been flipped to where they sit flat on a printer bed when you import them. So if you were trying to use these for a new case or something like that, you wouldn't want to because they're not aligned in the right. So, and I can hide each one, I can see them. And there.
Oh, it's just for the highlight it.
Does anyone have questions on the try-in workflow? The name label? So that was in the denture base stuff.
Open up the click next.
You just, so
You can look at the output file and see. Right click and generate F7, click F7, whatever.
So when you add it, it's going to look like it's raised off, and then when you apply it, it'll engrave in. And like I mentioned, you can fill that in with like tooth colored material, and it'll have a contrast so you can read it on the denture base. I like to put mine on the inside surface instead of the outside, so that when they open their mouth, you can't see, naming on their denture. But it's really simple to add. So in the sculpt denture base step, you have those 5 icons. One that looks like a green ball. There's one that looks like an A. That's your text box. So you just type into the box whatever you want. There's a text height, and then there's an engraving depth. So you set those however you want, and then you just hit the plus symbol and set it on where you want it on the STL or on the design. You can rotate it, and then when there's an apply button, you apply it and it engraves it down. It's really simple.
Any preference where?
It's just your preference. I prefer to put it on the palette on the inside, but that doesn't mean that everyone else would. Depends on how long the name is too. Sometimes, your preferred spot won't be ideal for every patient if they have a, 13-letter last name versus a 5-letter last name. It could be different. You can shrink the text down some, but you get it too small, you won't be able to read it. So you just kind of have to play around with what your ideal is, and then make it better.
When you add gingiva, if there is a red, thickness is not, do you need to add it automatically?
You're really only going to see a lot of that red on immediate dentures. You're not going to see it typically on final dentures, just because again you're limited on space. So you want to determine, is it in a load-bearing area that you're seeing it, or is it in a non-load?
You full safety, right?
If it's in a non-load-bearing area, I
forgot.
don't mess with
Like, for
it.
example, goes over
So like mine, it was
I
mostly
didn't put
around the
the
lower areas
little
that I
bar.
had it. So I
Can I go
did
back and
sit point
redesign?
out
Yeah,
of,
like
on the
redesign and
ridge
then
area,
you can put it
on.
right around the next.
Just go to the
I would
step.
say, well, I'm
that's
gonna
true.
thicken those areas out and make sure that they're plenty thick enough so that the denture doesn't break.
What is minimum requirement, thickness 2 millimeter or more?
It depends on the material. So Jimmy, what's the minimum thickness for the denture-based material from Dentsply?
2.5 on the maxillary, 3.5 on the mandible.
So there you go. So those are the values you want to shoot for.
A little bit higher than conventional.
Yeah, so 3D printed, like I said, is going to be a little bit weaker than conventional, where milled is going to be a little bit stronger. But the trade-off is time and cost. So, does anyone have any other questions?
I'm not sure if that's true. That's quite material. No, it's not.
It's
Stronger than conventional.
The printer is stronger.
They're saying.
That's what he wants to
Corey, can I, I'm Corey. Well, that's almost. The connectors, the connectors, bridge connections on your denture table,